thought was you cannot patent software. And the reason why we can't patent software, this is not 20 years ago, was because it was like a series of statements. And so you can't patent statements. It's just like trying to patent a formula. Right. Force equals mass times acceleration. You can't. But if you have some structure that abides by that formula, then you can patent it. 20 years ago, the only way you could protect software was by copyright application. And the way we used to do that in the United States, you had to file the first 25 pages of the code, and it would be the object code, not the source code, and the last 25 pages of the code. And if you had anything that was secret in there, you could black it up or redact it. So we had to do that. But you wouldn't have the middle part of it because, well, a lot of times the software went on for thousands of pages. But to infringe copyright, you have to then copy or substantially copy the code. But you know that if you can write a program that does the same thing with different statements. Or you can use different language, COBOL, or whatever else there was. So it was a weak way of protecting code. And over time, there are a lot of cases in the States, especially and in Canada, where you could patent software, but you have to write it in a particular format. And that's a lot more powerful way of protecting it because there you're protecting a different way, all kinds of different ways of accomplishing the same result. So when you write a patent application on software, you'll have flowcharts. So as long as you use the logic of the flowcharts and claim it that way, then you can stop anyone else from using it, which is a lot better way of protecting it than by trying to prove that they're substantially copying your code. In the old days, what the software companies used to do is they would put in random statements of code that did nothing. Okay. So that if your software program had that code, and there's no reason for it, and they knew that you copied it, so that was an easier way of doing it. And the first time something like that arose was in a game called Trivial Pursuit. I'm digressing a little bit, but it might be interesting to you. Trivial Pursuit, when it came out, was a phenomenon, and a lot of people tried to copy that idea. And what they would do is they would have like junior trivia, golden trivia, or they would have a question and answer game that was a little bit different, but same concept. And one was Golden Trivia from California, the company that sold the game, and the Trivial Pursuit people sued them because within the Trivial Pursuit game there are 5 cards that have the wrong answers. And so the junior trivia people had, like, instead of saying what's the capital of Canada, they would say Ottawa is the capital of what? So they could reverse it, and that's not copyright infringement. But if they had the same wrong answers, they said, well, how could you independently come up with this if you didn't copy it? So that's kind of digressing. But on the software side, so for the longest time, especially in the US and Canada, there were patents that were being granted for ideas. In the insurance industry or in the tax industry, you know, there's some lawyers that would find some tax loopholes and then they would try to patent them. And so the pendulum swung too far and they got patents granted. So now there's a case called Alice where it basically says that no, those patents are invalid because you have to have some kind of transformation of the information, or you have to have different physical devices that accomplish that result. So the pendulum is swinging the other way. It's much tougher now to get patents in software. Any other questions? Just a clarification. Yeah, go ahead.
So I build mobile devices. I'm the guy that does the flowchart.
Okay, great.
Okay, and then I give it to my programmers and they go to the app. Yeah, there's other people that can come back. So I say I need a patent for the flowchart. They say a copyright of the software is good enough. And I think you've explained you can copy software, reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
But you can't reverse engineer a flowchart.
So that's right. It's a lot more powerful way of protecting the patent. Now, patents are a lot more expensive. They're going to cost you at least
That's why they go.
Yeah, they're going to cost you at least $10,000, even with someone who's not working with Thompson. And a copyright will cost you $300.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you for that. I feel a lot.
All right, trade secrets. So I'm going to move on to trade secrets in terms of protecting knowledge or algorithms. So trade secrets, they cover any innovative formula. It could be customer lists, design instruments, compilation of information. So this is one way of protecting big data, but it must be secret. And you have to have procedures in place to keep it secret. So one of my clients many years ago was they manufactured automobile parts out of powder metal, where they kind of squeezed and heated it, and out came a gear. And what they had was one area in their plant that was covered by canvas. The people that worked in there had to sign secrecy agreements that they would not disclose what it is that they're doing. The access to that area was restricted, so if you wanted to go there, you had to sign a document that you were there. And so it was very tight. So if you take that concept into big data, if you have some kind of process that you want to protect and keep as a secret, then the programmers that are working in that area should sign secrecy agreements. Make sure that they don't walk out with a stick of information or email, maybe more difficult in that case. So trade secrets, the concept of that is to keep it secret, which is on the complete opposite scale of patents. When you file for a patent, you have to disclose the invention. You have to describe it in a technical term, and then you have to protect it by legal terms. So some clients will advise them not to file a patent, but rather keep it as a secret. But they have to keep it as a secret. And it only works if you can't reverse engineer. So if I have a process where I make this plastic as strong as steel, so you can't bend it or anything like that by irradiating gamma rays, heating it, and then quenching it. You couldn't, if you bought this, figure that out. So if there was such a process, you could protect it by trade secret instead. Then your term of protection would last as long as you kept it secret, which theoretically could be more than the 20 years that you get out of the patent. And then there are also companies that also come to us and say, there's this patent, how can I engineer around it? How can I avoid it so you don't get into that mix? And so for trade secrets, you have confidentiality agreements. See, we don't have time to talk about the questions.
Could you, if someone discovered a trade secret, could they go patent it?
Very good question. And that's happened before. So if someone's really kept it secret, and you come up with it independently, and you file for a patent, first of all, the patent will be examined by the examiner to make sure that what you've done is novel. And what the examiner does, he goes and looks at the published information. Not only patents, but whatever else is on Google. And if you can't find anything, which would be your case because it's secret by someone else, then you would meet that test. And then you'd have to look at, is it unobvious? Well, again, you'd have to look in the marketplace. There's nothing there, so it's unobvious and it's useful. So they could get a patent. So the person who discovered it second could get a patent on it. The person who manufactured it, say 10 years earlier, so long as they could prove that internally they had documents, then only they would be able to continue with their activity, but against the whole world, you would have the monopoly. That's a good question, because it does happen. Yes, Peter.
So yesterday we did a series of focus groups, and one of the things that we asked you was around banking mobile apps and why is it they're not adopting some of the mobile apps that the banks, or I should use the word payment products, mobile payment products that the banks are trying to push. And one of the feedbacks that they gave was around trust and privacy. And it was about why would I want to put all my information on a cell phone kind of thing, and then who's looking at it. So I don't want to have the Edwin Snow conversation, but if I go back to my TTC example, I am clear, crystal clear, that on some digital technologies like Facebook or LinkedIn, I do not pay any money for the use of Facebook or LinkedIn. In fact, I don't pay any money to Google for the use of Google. As much as I may not like it, I understand that as an organization, they're allowed to sell my data to anybody, whether it's John who wants my data or the Secret Service who wants my data. I get that. But the use of me with TTC, I did pay my TTC fee, as an example. I'm kind of a little bit on the student side of, I feel a little bit uncomfortable about my user experience and my behaviors being detected, and then turning into what my future behaviors are, and then what is it that they're going to do it. I have two questions for you about that. My first question is, what are my rights as a consumer, as a Canadian, as an American citizen, whatever? Because with Google, I may not like it, but if you sell my data, fine, and I'm not paying for it. But with TTC, I did pay for my fare. I didn't ask you to do anything about that data that you're collecting, and then why would you sell it to your advertiser? And then my second question is, I'm now, I don't know, I'm going to pick on Neil CIBC as an example. That's a lot of population people going on Sundays every morning. You mean you have predictable data? I'm going to take advantage. And if you were Neil, if you were CIBC, what would you do for me to give you my data? And